people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
I'm really excited for it, and I can't thank you enough. You know, you took a risk on a girl from white collar. I was a pharmacist at the time, and I'm going to repay the favor on Saturday and show you that, you know, I belong at this level.
What is a very tough assignment this weekend, and what feels like a rehearsal for an even bigger fight with more of a profile for young Ranan Dixon.
She will be facing Argentina's own Karen Carabajal this weekend for the newly vacated WBO title. And if she makes it through that, she may move right into a fight with former champion Terry Harper.
A fight that would have more of a profile, comparatively more of a profile than this one, even though this one feels like a rehearsal for that one. That if young Ranan can work around the long levers, combination punching and aggression of Karen Carabajal, then she may do all right opposite the ring Terry Harper. As Terry's long and limber, she's got long levers, long legs for long strides, and long arms for a long jab.
After she lost that fight to Sandy Ryan up there at 147, her longtime trainer and manager Steffi Bull detailed that they'll be moving down to 135, where this weekend's contest will be taking place.
I also heard Matchroom impresario Eddie Hearn say that he would like to make a fight between Terry Harper and Ranan, provided that Ranan takes care of business this weekend and becomes WBO champion. I think she's going to, but I don't think it's going to be easy.
Why?
Karen Carabajal is your, according to Hoyle, tough Argentinian slugger, volume puncher, and is a very aggressive customer. She's going to be throwing a lot at Ranan, and Ranan has to find a way to work around that and get punches in there. Do it safely without getting drawn into exchanges, as that's what Karen wants.
She wants to trade.
You will notice that Karen is a little taller and a little longer than Ranan Dixon, kind of like how Terry Harper is a little taller and a little longer than Ranan. But comparatively, Karen does throw more punches in a round than Terry does, that she does seem a more voluminous puncher within a round. So if Ranan can work around that, then she can work around Terry.
Terry's more economic,
more textbook, sets everything up off the jab, and doesn't take the same chances that a Karen Carabajal does. She is a more judicious and economic fighter than Karen Carabajal. So if Ranan can weather the storm with Karen, she might do all right against Terry.
No idea if they're going to get Terry a rebound fight between now and the time she's supposed to fight Ranan.
That if Ranan takes care of business this weekend, is Terry going to go straight into that fight with her, coming right off that loss, that lopsided loss to Sandy Ryan? Is that how they're going to do it? Or are they going to give Terry a chance to get back in the winner's bracket before it comes to that?
We'll see.
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. For now, Ranan has Karen Carabajal in front of her, and she has to get through it.
How?
While Karen is noticeably taller and longer, she's also slower.
Whereas Ranan, she's noticeably quick.
Faster on her feet with faster hands. Fast enough to slip in there, get off 2 or 3 shots, and get out.
Move!
Because of the discrepancy in height and length, Ranan Dixon doesn't have a choice but to get mid-range to inside on Karen. The trick is not staying there and not getting caught coming in.
And not getting caught stepping out.
Level changes and head movement. Keeping that head off center. Keeping her head on a swivel.
She has to.
Whether she's coming forward or moving backwards, because she's in there with a taller, longer fighter than herself. A fighter with a lot of ring coverage.
What's ring coverage?
Think of it as the amount of space a fighter takes and the amount of ground that a fighter can cover. That a taller, longer fighter that doesn't need to be close to you to touch you has a lot of ring coverage.
Karen's got it.
Shooting the jab and stepping into it, throwing straight punches from the outside coming in. Ranan Dixon is going to have to keep her head on a swivel, move and counter.
Because Karen's coming.
Even though Ranan is sharp and she's fast and she's banked her first recorded knockout. Karen is a tough Argentinian slugger that's never been stopped.
I don't think Ranan stops her. If she beats her, it's likely on points.
She can do that. She can get through Karen. She may be able to get through Terry Harper.
In a fight that would have more of a profile than this one.
Ranan, who started out in the white-collar circuit, has exceeded my expectations in the past. I remember she had to travel abroad to take on then unbeaten Majuba Uptil, a fighter who did have amateur experience. And Ranan was amazing.
She was fighting Majuba Uptil. She was fighting a referee who was on her case.
Fighting abroad. Now she's fighting Karen Carabajal, and I feel so inclined to give Ranan Dixon the benefit of the doubt that she can do it, and she's ready to become WBO champion. Ranan Dixon on points is the pick.
Dixon. I follow that phrase, to each his own, you know. Everybody's looking for the next star. Everybody's talking about how much money you can make and how many fans you can have and things like that. We really don't know what Inoue's what his goals are.
He's already a 4-division, 2-time undisputed champion. What do you mean you don't know what his goals are? It's very obvious what his goals are.
Are his goals to be the star in boxing?
He's already a star in boxing. He's a star to his own people. Now, maybe it's to the Americans. Maybe the Americans don't consider him a star.
But the Americans don't pay him.
If his goal is to be the star in boxing, you gotta come to the United States. It is what it is.
No, it isn't. And those tired old tropes won't suffice. Anthony Joshua made more money domestically in the United Kingdom than Wilder made in the United States.
You gotta cross those seas. You gotta knock out some Americans to make these other Americans take notice of who you are and what you're doing.
What was Stephen Fulton, Chinese?
Stephen Fulton's not American?
Oh, I know. It's because the fight was in Japan and not in America. Because of how much Americans love to watch bantamweights and super bantamweights, right?
There's a lot of people in the boxing world that respect Inoue and what he's done. But if you're someone like me, I'm saying, hey, let's get him. I don't think he's gonna lose, but let's get him out of his own backyard.
The Americans are always the ones to demand that a fighter leave their own neck of the woods to come here, but they seldom ever want to do that themselves.
They always want everybody to come here, even when they're a big draw where they're from.
Let's get him a little uncomfortable and see how he handles the energy when it's not at home.
Bullshit.
Would you tell Shakur Stevenson to go box in Japan for the sake of making him uncomfortable? Would you tell Gervonta Davis to do the same thing? Would you tell him to fight abroad? Fight in somebody else's country for the sake of making him uncomfortable?
Bullshit.
I know what you're going to tell me. What the retort is going to be that Gervonta Davis makes so much money here. Well, Inoue makes so much money over there.
You're gonna say, well, he can make even more if he comes here.
Then I'm gonna say Gervonta could make more if he fought in Saudi because they offered to pay him. To fight Devin Haney? Did you forget about that? The Turkey Al Sheikh offered to bankroll that fight. What is the best money in boxing right now? See, what this is a case of is rules for thee, but not for me.
Yep.
You wouldn't tell any of these American-based fighters to fight abroad just for the sake of fighting abroad.
Especially if they're making money here. Especially if they're making money domestically. And yet Inoue's making money domestically. Great money for a super bantamweight.
More money than I've ever seen any super bantamweight make. Just any fighter at or around those weights. He's making more money right now in Japan than Chocolatito was making here when he was on HBO.
So why should he come here? Because Sean Porter said so? Because the Americans want him to?
Americans, the fucking Americans. The fucking Americans don't support their own. They don't support their own homegrown American fighters. And I'm supposed to believe they're going to support a Japanese guy at super bantamweight, a division they don't even watch.
Leave the preeminent market for a bantamweight or a super bantamweight to come to America so you can deal with all the dicks, pricks, and fire sticks.
Well, I know that you can put about 50,000 asses and 50,000 seats over there and generate a lot of money and a lot of interest over there, but why don't you come here?
Due to some fleeting sense of entitlement, some Americans harbor thinking it's still the 90s or the early 2000s. It's not.
The world changed, and it seems that the Americans were the last to know that this is not your father's era of boxing, and where many foreign fighters had to come to America to make money in the sport, it's because the American market was the preeminent market for the sport, though over time, that changed.
It's not anymore.
The way you're still telling yourself in 2024 that you haven't made it, you haven't really made it unless you make it in America. There are many fighters in America that the Americans don't support. Coming here for Inoue would be fruitless.
Pointless.
Think about a fighter like Terrence Crawford, a 3-division, 3-time lineal, 3-time Ring Magazine, 2-time undisputed champion that does not have the same domestic support here in America that Inoue already has in Japan. And your advice to Inoue is to come here and subject himself to these same people that don't support their own.
For what?
What you really communicate when you make a demand like this is that in spite of all of Inoue's accomplishments so far, having been a champion in 4 separate weight classes and an undisputed champion in 2, that his career accomplishments are not enough.
Because they didn't happen in America.
It's what you might as well be saying, that the fighters that he fought and the champions that he beat and everything that he's done so far, it's not good enough because it didn't happen in front of an American audience.
Not good enough for who? You? You guys that don't even support your own?
It's the vanity that gets me. The nerve, the audacity that you could wag your finger in the face of someone who's already accomplished so much and made history and made money.
Makes money.
Think about Anthony Joshua, who largely in part fought on his own home turf, made most of his money there. More money than Wilder made over here, that's right. Anthony made more in the UK than Wilder made in the US.
So how important is it really to appease the American fans when a UK guy who primarily fights out of the UK made more money, makes more money? He's one of the top 2 earning fighters on the Forbes list. The only guy that makes more money than AJ is Canelo.
But Canelo's not American.
Besides the point.
There are many homegrown American fighters that Americans don't support, that you would advise Inoue to come here as if they're going to support him or as if he has something he needs to prove to you.
I ain't gonna be nice about it.
Sean, Inoue is already many times a better fighter than you ever were. He already has a better career than you had, that he's going to take career advice from you.
He doesn't need to.
I don't want Inoue to come to America to appease these guys. I don't think he should have to.
No.
He's not dysfunctional enough for the Americans, not toxic enough. What they'd rather do is argue about boxers that aren't even boxing, where Inoue is focused on his boxing and focused on winning and unifying titles and doing what he needs to do.
You're focused on what rumors Adrian Broner is spreading about Alicia Baumgartner and why Gervonta hasn't fought his contemporaries yet.
How Americans entertain themselves with the sport of boxing doesn't actually pertain to the sport of boxing most of the time. It's all about the gossips and the tribalism, the toxicity, the xenophobia.
And this is the audience you want him to subject himself to.
I never have to worry about Inoue getting a fight made. I never have to worry about this guy getting a fight done that needs to be done at his weights in a timely fashion. I never have to worry about that because he's such a big draw over there, he can make it happen.
He does make it happen, but that's not good enough for Sean.
He needs to knock out Americans. He's got to knock out Americans. Hey, what fucking Americans do you want him to knock out at 122 pounds? He didn't knock out Stephen Fulton.
Is there an American with a belt at 122 I haven't heard about? Because last I checked, there was only one, and he knew he already beat him.
So here's the bottom line. Inoue does not have to come to America to make it because he already made it.
He's already a star.
He's already got a legacy that's better than most American fighters' legacies in the sport of boxing, that he doesn't need to come here to appease you, approve something of you.
No.
It's not the 80s, it's not the 90s, or the early 2000s. Yeah, maybe back when people spent money on boxing in America, that would have made sense. They don't like to do that anymore, so there's no reason for a proven draw who's already drawing to come here.
Subject himself to your toxic,
No.
dysfunctional bullshit.
Fuck no. Upstairs in men's junior middleweight news, Terrence Crawford's lawyer contacted Samson Lukowicz with an offer to make the fight between them in Saudi Arabia. This is per an interview with Pro Box TV en Espanol from none other than Samson Lukowicz himself, who admitted Crawford made them an offer. In Samson Lukowicz's own words, Crawford's lawyer called me very respectfully and said, "Look, I have an offer for you to fight in Saudi Arabia with Crawford and your fighter Sebastian Fundora." And I said, "Look, I thank you very much, but I don't want to hear it because he's not going to be ready until November. I didn't say December, but it seems like until December. I mean, I didn't listen to the offer. I can't listen to it. I can't negotiate when my fighter is hurt. The injuries that Sebastian Fundora is said to have sustained in the Tim Tszyu fight, a busted mouth, a broken nose.
They said the guy's not going to be cleared to train or spar until September, that it will bench him for most of the year, likely returning at the very end of it.
I don't actually believe his injuries are that severe. You'll excuse me for being suspicious and skeptical whenever Samson Lukowicz and the PBC are involved, but I don't buy it, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Errol Spence Jr. walked into the ring
After the fight.
It's a coincidence that he was there, and it's a coincidence that immediately after the fight, Samson Lukowicz starts talking about how he wants to make Fundora versus Spence. These are all coincidences? I don't think so. We all knew ahead of the fight that whoever won would have to satisfy Terence Crawford as a mandatory, and I don't think Samson Lukowicz wants his fighter to do that.
We knew before the fight.
Whoever won the fight, Tim Tszyu, Sebastian Fundora, whoever wins and whoever becomes WBO champion, they have to deal with Terence Crawford. So I think they're exaggerating about the recovery time, pushing it way out there towards the end of the year because they don't want to make that fight. Even if it costs them the WBO title, they'll do it.
Just see Samson Lukowicz has been flopping like a fish ever since that fight.
The night of, he starts talking about how he wants to make Fundora versus Spence. Not but 2 days later, he talks about how he wants to honor the rematch clause. The rematch clause between Sebastian and Tim, where initially they said there was no rematch clause. No contractual obligation to fight Tim again.
But they never talked about Crawford.
That's the fight Samson never talked about. That's the fight that Samson never entertained. If you want to know what I think, and you're here, so I'll assume that you do.
This is all a ruse.
And not even Saudi Arabian dollars, not even a big Saudi Arabian payday is enough for Samson to risk putting his fighter in the ring with Terence Crawford.
You think that's a stretch?
I don't think. I know, because these are Samson's own words. He wouldn't even entertain them. He wouldn't even entertain the conversation to at least get that dialogue going and a potential ETA for the fight date. So what if your fighter is benched for the rest of the year, or most of it? You can still talk to these people.
You went from postulating about Spence to postulating about a Tim Tszyu rematch, but you wouldn't even entertain these people when it came to Crawford.
Because that's not part of the plan. And rest assured, Samson Lukowicz is a man with a plan. I still think Spence is on the table. If not Spence, Tim Tszyu. If they've got to drop the WBO title, and they might, under pressure from the WBO.
They will.
Because they've still got the WBC, and they could take that WBC title, defend it against Tim, and defend it against Spence voluntarily. They're not under any orders from the World Boxing Council to fight Sergei Bohachuk.
But they are under orders from the World Boxing Organization to fight Terence Crawford, who seems more and more sympathetic towards the plight of Terence.
And I can hardly blame them. People accuse Terence of being notoriously inactive when all the while, this is the kind of stuff that's been going on. He had to wait for Spence to make up his mind about the rematch, and he didn't do that until earlier this year. Now you have Sebastian Fundora's team dragging their feet.
He's got them all running scared.